Hello, everybody, and welcome to Project HR, a podcast dedicated to building better workplaces. Project HR is brought to you by IRI Consultants. IRI empowers leaders to prevent and solve mission-critical workforce issues through holistic and sustainable strategies. For more information, you can visit IRI at iriconsultants.com. I am Jennifer Orquad, Director of Business Development for IRI, and your host for this episode of Project HR. In today's fast-paced, ever-changing landscape, the ability to innovate is crucial. In fact, according to one Accenture survey, 84% of executives consider their future success to be very or extremely dependent on innovation. But innovation is not something that happens on demand. It's something that has to be nurtured, encouraged, and given space to grow in an environment that values the true source of innovation, creativity. In this episode, I'm talking with Steven Kowalski. Steven is the founder and CEO of Creative License Consulting Services, the organization and learning evolution lead at biotechnology company Genentech, and he is the author of Creative Together, Sparking Innovation in the New World of Work. Steven, thank you so much for talking with me today on Project HR.
Great to be here, Jennifer.
So, Steven, let's talk a little bit about the relationship between creativity and innovation. I think those two elements often get confused.
Yes, they do. In Creative Together, I talk about how innovation is a type of creative result. It's a pretty simple definition of innovation, given all the detailed definitions we might hear from different folks. But innovation really is just a type of creative result. It's a result that yields new value. And in order for us to innovate, we have to look back at what drives innovation, and that is creativity. So creativity precedes innovation. Sometimes our creativity yields results that don't deliver new value, but when they do deliver new value, we call that innovation.
Very good. So why write this book now? Why write it at all?
Gosh, over the years, I've watched people struggle to bring forward their creativity in response to challenges they face or desires and aims that they have for themselves. For example, I might want to write a book or start a business, or maybe I'm in the HR organization of a large company, and I want to bring forward new innovations and new processes and so forth. So sometimes we face challenges, like the pandemic has been a great example of that, and we have to create and innovate into those challenges. And sometimes we have desires and aims and aspirations, and we need to create into that. So I've watched people over the years, and managers and leaders, in addition to folks, employees in companies, really struggle to bring forward their creativity in a conscious way to help realize those aims. So I wanted to write this book to share everything that I've learned about creativity over the years, and to help people kind of go on a journey to rediscover, reclaim their creative potential, and then create more effectively together. In this new world of work we're living in and working in, post-pandemic and more, with incredible changes in technology and interdependencies and all the volatility and complexity we know about. People will derive strength from creating together, from working together in new ways, and creating together is one of those ways. We're not necessarily that great at creating together. So I wanted to bring this book forward to share everything I learned about creativity and about what it means to co-create.
So you split this process of becoming creative together into 3 adventures. Why did you choose to do it that way?
Well, first of all, it's really critical that we rewrite the story of who we are as a creator. And so that's adventure one at a high level. And the reason to rewrite the story of who we are as a creator is so that we can create more effectively with others. And so that's adventure two. Adventure three is a springboard to practicing on a daily basis, bringing conscious creativity into my work and life.
And altogether, these adventures make up your gifted methodology. Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure, the gifted methodology. So the G stands for greet the unknown with passion. And often I know for myself, when I'm facing the unknown, sometimes I face it with dread, or I don't greet it. I face it with dread and try to avoid it at all costs. So the first step in the gifted methodology is about greeting the unknown with passion, understanding that I have this creative potential, and that's what's going to help me meet that unknown with all the incredible resources and talent and expertise and knowledge that I have. So that's the G. I is around igniting creative potential. And that's where we learn about how creativity really works, and creativity at the intersection of purpose, possibility, and constraint. So the I is igniting creative potential. And the F is for flexing superpowers. We have these incredible superpowers. I talk about four of them in Creative Together. And so F, flexing your superpowers. T is for thriving in co-creation. And co-creation involves so many different changes in our behavior and how we work together with others and create together with others. E is for experimenting in the swamp. We're all going to face organizational sludge and resistance and protecting and kind of the trappings of ego in our workplaces. So when we find ourselves in those swamps, we experiment. So E, experiment in the swamp. And D is for dare to dream big, which is about taking all this incredible creative potential we have and actually applying it in ways that really make a difference in our world.
So, and you mentioned a minute ago, I want to go back to you were talking about Adventure One is all about the story. It's about getting in touch with your own creativity. But creativity in and of itself can be hard to define. How do you identify that creative spark within yourself?
Well, I think of creativity and propose a definition of creativity that says creativity is really our natural potential to invent solutions to the problems we face or the ones we design for ourselves. And I mentioned this earlier. So creativity is really a potential. What actually sparks the creativity is a purpose. Purpose is the spark, and it's the most important part of what activates our creativity. So once I have a purpose, and when I say purpose, I mean the reason why the status quo isn't good enough, or the reason why I might need to invent something or change something. So the purpose is the spark. Once I have that purpose, my potential gets activated. And then what I need to do is kind of dance in the intersection of purpose, possibility, and constraint. Sometimes people think creativity is all about coming up with possibilities. It's not. That's just one part of it. Creativity is about dancing in the intersection of purpose, possibility, and constraint.
So, based on your research and everything you've learned in putting this together, do you believe that everyone has creativity within them?
Absolutely. From the perspective of when you think of creativity as a potential instead of an ability, right? I mentioned earlier, like if we think of creativity as an ability, some people are going to be more, some people are going to be less, and most people are going to be in the middle. It's like a normal distribution curve. But when we think about creativity as a potential, it changes everything. What that means is that when the circumstances require or ask for my creativity, that potential is there to meet those circumstances. So it's less about what's inside of me as an ability and more about the circumstances out in the world and the circumstances I create for myself to bring that creativity forward, to activate that creativity. So, from a potential based definition of creativity, everyone is creative. It's there all the time. We're actually highly creative and we're using it way more than we even recognize.
All right, Stephen, I've got to take a quick sponsorship break right now, but when we return, I want to talk about overcoming creative disruption disorder. Stay with us.
In today's ever-evolving political and economic climate, the relationship you have with your employees is critical to the success of your business, but it is also the most vulnerable. At IRI Consultants, we understand the pressures your labor and employee relations teams are under, from changes at the NLRB to immigration issues to controversial Supreme Court decisions. The IRI team brings 40-plus years of expertise. Our team includes published authors, CEOs, human resources, and communications professionals, former labor and employee relations executives, public relations experts, investigative journalists, and even award-winning podcasters. The IRI team will work with you every step of the way so that you can focus on running your business while we handle your trickiest labor and employee relations challenges. Get started today at iriconsultants.com.
I'm back now with Steven Kowalski, author of Creative Together, Sparking Innovation in the New World of Work. And Stephen, in the book, you stated that the goal of getting in touch with our creativity is to overcome creative disruption disorder. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so we're all walking around with some measure of creativity disruption disorder. And I coined that term because it accurately describes a condition where we just we're not in touch with our creative potential. We're not using it consciously. We're not calling it forward in others and ourselves. So when we have this measure of creativity disruption disorder, we're thinking that, well, maybe we're not that creative, or as I said, we're not consciously using it. So the goal is to kind of overcome creativity disruption disorder by changing the story of who we are as creators, and then by watching and learning and consciously using our creativity. And when I say consciously using it, I mean using our creative potential with intention and with attention. I'm paying attention to how it's working. I have intention about what I want to do with it. That's what I'm referring to when I say conscious creativity.
Very good. So, how does the creative together process encourage this connection to our own creativity? Are there exercises? What's the process?
Yeah, the whole book is designed as a journey of exploration and discovery. So, through the different adventures, people connect to their creativity through, uh, you know, considerations, through reflection questions that help them apply the concepts in their own life. So it's really designed as a journey, a journey kind of like the hero's journey in a sense, where you learn about allies. Our superpowers are our allies, or our tests, the tests that we might face, on a creative quest. And so, the book unfolds as this journey of exploration and discovery with resources there, and resources that are actually on the website stevenkowalski.com. There's QR codes in the book that link to those extra resources to help people go further if they want to explore further.
So, Adventure One is all about understanding where we are in our own creative journey. Tell me about Adventure Two.
Adventure two is when you take the benefits of doing that inner work in Adventure one out into the world and work to become more effective as a co creator. So in Adventure two, we talk about our creative styles that form in relationship to our growth and development. So as we grow up, as we're kids, we're in school, first jobs and so forth, we're responding to social systems. We're responding to, the teachers, the school, parents, bosses, and so forth. And we kind of shape this creative style. And I talk about four creative styles: the soloist, the rebel, the entrepreneur, and the collaborator. So the first part of Adventure Two is really about understanding my style and how that shows up. And then in Adventure Two, we continue and we actually suggest that we shape and change our style, because the new world of work is really requiring us to work differently. Maybe bring that forward, that collaborator style forward. It's the one that's probably found least often as we look out into the world of work. So, how can we bring the collaborator forward? How can we co create? How can we share leadership? How can we more effectively cross these swamps that we face, like, the organizational sludge that happens when we're in a bureaucratic organization? So, that's what Adventure Two is really about.
So, it seems to me that this sharing might be the most challenging aspect of the work, to be creatively vulnerable. What do you think about that?
Sharing can be vulnerable, especially if we're sharing something that's not done
Mm.
before it's done. If we're sharing fragments of ideas, or if we're sharing, I remember when I was a kid, I would bring, things that I was working on to my parents and to others, and they'd say things like, "Well, bring it to me when it's done."
Mm.
And so, but I wanted input along the way, and we know from a lot of the agile methodology that's percolating through business today that early customer input and early and frequent customer input is really important, right? So if we're sharing something before it's done, like, all kinds of things about perfectionism can come up. If we're sharing about a mistake or a failure, if we're sharing something that feels like it's my idea, and if I feel like maybe I'm giving it away or something, so sharing can be vulnerable. But actually, the most vulnerability comes from co-creating.
Mm.
When we're co-creating, we're actually jointly producing a result that we couldn't produce on our own. And there's a lot of dynamics that happen in co-creating that we have to address, like being able to let go, being able to dance between me and my needs and my wants, and the sort of the needs and wants of the collective. So I think actually co-creating is where the most vulnerability happens, but sometimes sharing can be vulnerable too.
So you mentioned perfectionism as one of the challenges. So what role does ego play in this new environment of co-creativity? Is there anything that we as leaders can do to discourage creative clashes?
Yeah, first of all, I'll address the ego part. Ego can be anybody, including leaders and managers. But sometimes the power of position makes these ego impacts greater when it's coming from a manager or leader. But all of us have to address like some part of us that wants credit. So seeking credit or protecting our territory, protecting our turf, protecting our ideas, or resisting others' ideas or challenges or changes to the status quo. So resistance, protecting, and credit seeking are probably the three biggest
Mm.
impacts of ego when we're creating together. What managers and leaders can do is to understand that uh, creativity is something that needs to be fostered and encouraged. And there are so many ways leaders and managers can tamp down on that. They can influence what's possible by not giving folks degrees of freedom to explore. They can demand innovation without even realizing what's required when you ask for that. When leaders and managers ask for innovation, they're asking people to cross into the unknown. You have to give that space. You can't be overly micromanaging. Um, my own tolerance of ambiguity as a manager or leader will impact whether people feel that they can experiment and explore. So, helping people focus their creativity, giving breathing space and allowing the exploration, also having rigorous stage gate checks for investments in innovation are really important too. Everyone should understand what the criteria is for moving ideas forward, for getting investment for ideas. And that should be a transparent process. Sometimes managers and leaders um, don't make that process as clear as it could be.
Fascinating. All right, it's time for another quick break. We'll be right back after this. You're listening to the Project HR podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Orqua, and my guest today is Steven Kowalski, author of Creative Together, Sparking Innovation in the New World of Work. We're back. So, Steven, we've gotten in touch with our own creativity. We've shared it with our co-creators, and now we're ready for Adventure 3. Tell me about that.
Well, Adventure 3 is really a springboard for practicing on a daily basis. Conscious creativity is not something that comes, in a flash, or it's not something that's done and dusted once I attain it. It's something that we need to work on every day. So, and I work on it every day. We all need to work on it every day. How is our creativity showing up? How could we deepen and strengthen our relationship with our own creativity? Where do I get stuck? What triggers me? So Adventure 3 is really about developing a practice plan for working on this as a learning and development edge, going forward.
So, I love the idea that this is not a skill that you learn and move on. It's something you can continue to practice throughout your entire life. And you mentioned that you're still very intentional about it. Is there ever a point where this really becomes second nature?
I'll speak from my own experience here. I think that it does become second nature in certain arenas, and then I know for myself I still struggle. For example, I just recently moved across the country, setting myself up in a new home, a new city, lots of unknowns. So if I'm working the gifted methodology, I'm greeting those unknowns with passion instead of dread.
Mm.
Well, sometimes I don't always succeed, and so I find that this process is becoming more second nature for me, like in ways when I work with others, or if I'm trying to achieve something, in the organizations or with clients that I'm working with. Sometimes the big life unknowns are a little bit harder, and I have to remind myself of the gifted methodology and all that I've said about bringing my creative potential to those unknowns.
So, in the book, you shared some real life examples of people who are using these methodologies. Any success stories you'd want to share?
One of the biggest success stories that I keep in the back of my mind is when we were working on some culture, work, and great place to work kind of initiatives in HR, and we brought four departments together. I talk about this in Creative Together. Uh, Four departments that normally wouldn't necessarily co-create together. So that was facilities, HR, IT, and corporate communications. And those four departments working together to create and deliver an employee promise and to create a vibrant campus and a culture and so forth. It's not something that necessarily I think a lot of folks would think of, bringing those four departments to work on something together. That was a great success story, and so many things have come out of that partnership. Another example maybe was a 3-year innovation culture change effort that I was working on with clients in a facilities organization. And they really wrote the check for working on this. I mean, when folks work on culture change, sometimes they want to see results immediately. And yes, we want to see results immediately, but also we understand that culture change is a long-term process. So that was an amazing effort where people really got involved. We had an innovation incubator lab. We had educational programs. We had peer investment groups that were reviewing ideas and making investment decisions. It was all being done by folks for themselves.
So, what do you hope your readers take away from the book?
Oh, I guess the main thing that I hope readers take away from the book is that we are incredibly creative. We're highly creative. We might not think so, but that's part of CDD, so creativity disruption disorder. So I hope readers take away from the book, I am highly creative. My creativity is there when I need it. I can get better at creating with others, and together we can meet the challenges of the new world of work in ways that maybe we haven't even thought of before.
I love that. If our listeners want to find out more about you or about your book, where can they go?
Best place to go is stevenkowalski.com. The website is full of information. There's a tab about the book, and there's book resources that are there that they link to the QR codes in Creative Together. And there's all sorts of other free downloads and information there. They can find out about me on LinkedIn. That's also another great place to reach out. So those are the two probably easiest ways in. You can order the book directly from stevenkowalski.com, or you can go to your favorite online retailer.
And again, of course, all of these links and this information on Steven's book will be included in this week's episode companion guide, which you can grab for free at iriconsultants.com/podcast. Right now, though, Steven, it is time for our lightning round questions. These are questions I ask of every guest of the podcast. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, our first question is a topic showdown. In this episode, we've been talking about sparking innovation and by being creative together. So in your opinion, which of these three internal factors affecting creativity is most important? Knowledge, imagination, or attitude?
Imagination. Imagination precedes creativity, just like creativity precedes innovation.
Very nice. What's the best book you've read recently?
Gary Hamel's book, Humanocracy. Great book about a different way of thinking about our organizations than the bureaucratic models we've had in the past.
And next question, what is your favorite thing about the work that you do?
Seeing people succeed at things they really care about.
I like that. And next question, what is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Best piece of advice. There are multiple futures ahead of us. And this is part of 3 truths that I talk about in Creative Together. It's sort of the foundation. There are multiple futures ahead of us. We have agency, but we don't have control over all the pieces of making those futures come to light. And that the futures we seek, what we seek is seeking us, to quote Rumi, a Sufi poet.
Very nice. All right, last question. Who or what inspires you?
Well, in my office, I have 3 gigantic posters up high on the wall. Martin Luther King, Mother Teresa, and Albert Einstein, 3 really important people in my life. Martin Luther King is asking me, am I going for my dream? Albert Einstein's asking me, am I following my curiosity? And Mother Teresa's asking me whether I'm helping others. So those 3 folks are always behind me, and I keep them alive in my world to guide me.
That's a very creative answer. That's probably the most creative answer we've ever had to that question. I like that. Thanks so much for joining me today on this week's episode of Project HR, Steven.
Thank you, Jennifer. Great to be here.
I also want to thank those listening in. Here's a final reminder to unlock your access to this episode's companion guide at iriconsultants.com/podcast. If you're ready for your Project HR debut, our team is always looking for outstanding guests. Let us know about your expertise by emailing us at projecthr@iriconsultants.com. Also, as we continue with our new bi-weekly schedule, that's a new show posting every other week, don't forget to subscribe to Project HR to keep up. Finally, drop me a line, leave us a review, or give the show a handful of stars wherever you get your content. That's all for this episode of Project HR. Let's make it a great day at work.